Hi, it's Jackie here from the LGFA. You're welcome along to another Zoom interview where we're interviewing somebody with very close links to the LGFA, obviously. And today's guest is Mr. Brendan Moran, a well-known photographer with Sportsfile, who cover a lot of our events from press launches, one-off gigs, matches, all-star tours, all-star nights, you name it. The guys from Sportsfile have been on board, and Brendan is one of the very best in the business. And delighted to have you on board today, Brendan. How are you?
Morning, Jackie.
All is good, yeah.
All good, yeah, yeah, another day.
How has before we get into what we're talking about today, Brendan? How has lockdown been? I'm sure it's been a difficult, some choppy waters for you guys in recent times without sport, competitive sport to work on. But you've been finding other ways to get some work done.
Yeah, in fairness now, the lack of sport has been very strange. Like the fact that we've all had weekends off for the last 3 months has been very unusual. Um, yeah, we're enjoying that element of it while it's going, but it has been tough in that, there's been no sport. So as a result, income is difficult. Uh, you know, People have mortgages, people have kids, all sorts of stuff going on. The usual that everybody else has to deal with. But in fairness, we've been quite inventive in that we've photographed players in lockdown. We're starting to go through old archive stuff at the minute, digging up pictures from the past and putting them on our website and all this sort of stuff. So there's I suppose things we probably never had time to do that we can do now. Um, because I think before this lockdown happened, we're just flat out, and we've been flat out for years nearly. So in some ways, it's good to take a bit of a backward step and just reassess and take a minute to get a breather. But we're all eager to go now as soon as it gets up and running, sooner
I,
rather than later.
I'm looking forward to sending you through a few briefs for various matches, all going to plan, Bren. Who came up with the idea of no context sports file on Twitter? I'm really enjoying those ones, I have to say.
Well, in fairness, Piers O'Meara looks after our social media at the moment, and in fairness, he finds the oddest stuff. I don't know
He does.
where. Like I would have a fair memory for the archive going back over the years, but even some of them pictures that he's put up on it, I just don't know where you'd see. Or like he threw up a picture of a Galway player interacting with a dog there recently, and it was my picture, and I don't even remember taking it. I think it might have been in Burr or something at a All Ireland quarter final or something, but I just don't even remember taking it. But yeah, there's like I suppose like with nearly 2 million pictures on the site, like
Wow.
you have all sorts of everything on it, and sometimes you just forget what's on it. But Pierce, in fairness, does a good job. I don't know how he finds them, like needle in a haystack stuff. But
Mm.
in fairness, he does a it's a quirky little look at things, and it's something that's not too serious. It's a bit of a laugh, It's that kind of way. I suppose to take a like in fairness, it's tough times doing it for everybody. So I need a little bit of light um, or a bit of humour. Sometimes can just go a long way. Like
Absolutely, really enjoying them, and it's a nice little segue into what we're talking about today, Brendan. We've asked you to dip into your own archives and tell us about some of your favourite photographs that you've taken of the LGFA down through the years. And I'm just going to share a screen here, Brendan, right? So we're going to kick off with a list. So if I can get onto a full screen with this one. Brendan, tell us a little bit about this one. This is the 1998 All-Ireland Final replay, I believe, on your wall of Waterford celebrating at the final whistle. Why does this one stick out for you?
well, it sticks out. I suppose the main reason it sticks out is because it made the front page of the Irish Independent the following day. And like I would have only been a fair nipper at that stage, like that's 20 something years ago. But we would have covered the All Ireland final in Croke Park back then every year. You know, I suppose up until we kind of had a more formal relationship with ladies football. As far as I can remember, we've even covered the All Irelands before they were in Croke Park, which is going back now a long way. But this one for me, like when you're a young up and coming photographer, to get the front page of any newspaper is a big deal.
Fantastic shot.
So it was nice for me to get like I went to a replay. Now I wouldn't have known what I know about ladies football now. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it was just like trying to get a good photograph, and that's particularly why it stands out. It was, as I said, it was probably one of my first front pages of the Irish Independent, um, and that's probably the main reason it sticks out, you know. And the game has obviously changed an awful lot since then. Like I couldn't tell you what the crowd were back in 1998, but like you look at last year, like you're talking 50, 60,000, you know. So it's come a long way in what, 24 years.
Yeah, it's been a fair journey, all right, I have to say, Brendan. Lovely shot. So I'm going to move on to our next one. So we'll just get out of there for a second. This one, Brendan, these two kind of marry together. So I'm just going to take a quick snapshot here. But look at the absolute elation here in Juliet Murphy's face. But first and foremost, we're going to go to this one, right? So at the time, there was obviously a little bit of history behind this one. These were the 10 Cork players who, at the time, in 2013, had won 8 All-Ireland medals.
Correct. Yeah. 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 Like you know, I would have seen a lot of them players throughout their career. I think I was at maybe 5 out of the 8 finals. And I know a lot of them personally. Some of them are very good friends of mine, and it's good to like when you get to know people over time. You want them to do well. Okay, they're Cork. I'm Kerry. We'll put that aside for a minute. But in fairness, they are one of the greatest teams ever in the history of sport in Ireland. Never mind ladies football. So, like to have recorded, to have recorded a number of them, particularly when you get them all together for one picture, and they obviously have Eamon, Ryan, and Frankie there. And it's just a huge historical picture more so than anything else, because I like a lot of them players, you know, the 10 of them together that won 8 All Irelands, they may never meet again ever in life. Now, I don't know their circumstances, but I have heard from players in the past, both male and female players, that after the All Ireland final is the best time. The 5, 10, 15 minutes after the All
Very
Ireland
true.
final when they're celebrating, because you know when they go to the dressing room, and you know some people go for dope testing, some people go to the press, then they go off to the banquet, then they go off celebrating with their clubs and whatever, and they may not always get back together again. So, like for me, this is why this was a hugely important picture on the day from a historical point of view.
So I'm just going to block us out for a second there, Bren, while we go through them from left to right. You've Juliet Murphy, Deirdre O'Reilly, Nully Cleary, Rena Buckley. This is from left to right, back row. That's Elaine Hart, goalkeeper, Breach Stack, Angela Walsh, Valerie Mulcahy, Breach Corkery, Geraldine O'Flynn, and then Eamon and Frankie at the front. So I think, the fact that we can ream them off and name them off like that is an indication too of the profile that these Cork players generated right through their careers. Brendan, they very much became household names.
Oh, very much so, very much so, and it certainly helped in the promotion of ladies football. Do you know what I mean? You had, in fairness, ladies football were huge in promoting sport. In terms of like when we started our relationship with ladies football, you know, it was one of the first governing bodies that kind of took it on board and did it year in, year out, week in, week out. So like we've covered the championship, as I said, since the late 90s. And it certainly helped develop the sport, and it kind of was ahead of a lot of sports as its time. You know, you've got obviously men's GA, rugby, and soccer that kind of keep going all the time. But for a sport that had literally very little profile in the late 90s, or mid to late 90s, like you had the Kerry team from the late 80s and the 90s, you know, and how many people could name them? Whereas when you take it on to this team, you know, as you say, they're household names, and a lot of that was down to the foresight by Helen and the ladies football to start pushing it and to generate publicity for it. And now, as you say, with the likes of the help of yourself and Derek and predecessors, you know, you're getting crowds of 50, 60,000 at the All-Ireland finals now.
Yeah, it was just a privilege to watch those players as well, Brendan. In a previous life as a writer, as you know, I did a lot of matches prior to taking on the current role. It was just an absolute honour to watch them. And two you have here. This is Juliet Murphy.
Yeah, like one of the
what an image! You know, her sinewed neck, just an absolutely toned athlete, and obviously just relishing the moment here, Brendan.
Well, it's just the delight in her face for me. Like it's literally as the whistle went. Now, admittedly, there's a countdown clock in ladies football, so you can kind of time it yourself. But for me, it's just the initial final whistle. While the other picture is is all well and good. It's more a historical picture, and it's staged, and make sure everybody's there and they're all smiling and everything. But this is like just an instant, because as I said to you, like, players enjoyed the first few minutes after the final whistle and the first few minutes of celebration, and it's the elation in her face. It's just, you know, I just love that picture because you've got Geraldine in the background and you've got other people coming in, and it's and she was one of the key players on the team over that period of time. Just was well able to dominate the game, well able to control the game, and that's part of the reason I love the picture is just the emotion in her face.
Great
It's very
shot.
hard to see that on television, and that's why it's just brilliant in a stills photograph.
Brilliant. We're going to move on to our next one, and I'm going to go down to Alicia Jordan, Brendan. And the background to this, as you tell me, is I have some notes here. Alicia Jordan, New York, looks at a message on her hand which reads, "If you could see me now," in reference to her late father while waiting to meet the dignitaries before the game. Her father had passed away that June, and I remember talking to Alicia, and an incredible backstory as well. She's been through an awful lot and suffered so much tragedy, and you can see the emotion is etched on her face even before the off there, Brendan.
Yeah, it was just like it's only a split second.
It's a
You
beautiful
know what I
shot.
mean? And obviously I would have been there to take the dignitaries shaking hands and whatever. But I wouldn't necessarily know the full story at the time. But a lot of times on match days, you're just looking out for instances during the game that could tell a bigger story or whatever. And I just think, like, when you know the story afterwards, I think it's a telling picture in that nobody knows what's going on in her head necessarily. But I think you get
Alicia suffered a brutal beating in New York herself some years ago. She was viciously assaulted in an unprovoked attack in the Bronx in 2012. So I think that the words that she's obviously etched on her hand there, "If you could see me now," what a message to her dad. God, I even feel. I remember talking to Alicia at the time, just an incredibly strong woman,
mm,
Brendan, and just an incredible picture and a very,
but I just
very,
think
very
it
emotional
kind of
picture.
gives a little instant insight to her motivation on the day. Do you know what I mean? That it wasn't just about winning a game; it was so much more than that.
It absolutely was. Brilliant, brilliant picture. Brendan, I'm going to skip down to, in no particular order. I love this one, and it was referenced in a piece we did last week. We actually had Annie Walsh on last week alongside Lindsay Davey, and I asked her about this particular picture because it's one that always stuck with me and resonated with me as well. Brendan, there was such sportsmanship between those two counties, even though they met so often. And it was Lindsay who recounted the story. I think it was Annie and one of the other Cork players was waiting for each and every one of those Dublin players in the tunnel as they went off to wish them well. And obviously a difficult thing to do for Dublin at the time when in that they'd lost the third successive final
Mm,
to Cork.
mm.
But this one just sums it up. Obviously, you've got Annie, who's on one spectrum of emotion, absolutely elated after winning another All Ireland medal, and you have Niamh, who's just lost her third final in a row, and I just take it away, Brendan. Like
Yeah, like it's again, while we do the action, we do the scores of the game and everything. Generally, in All Ireland final, you're trying to look for just one photograph to kind of sum it up. And in fairness, like the likes of this would make front of the newspaper the following day. It's as much it tells you as much about the game as one would or anything else. And there's a certain amount of human element to it and human interest in it. So
amazing shot
like you don't necessarily even have to have seen the game to understand what's going on here. And I just think it's the respect between the players.
for sure.
They'd probably be a lot more familiar with each other than a lot of their male counterparts. Do you know what I mean? Because they would go to college, they play college football together, and there'd be there'd be a huge amount of respect between each other. And we see it at the awards and we see it at tours and whatever. But I just think it's you're always looking out for a moment like this, and sometimes you have to wait for it to happen. But it's I just think it's a lovely picture of two athletes that just went at their all, but they respect each other and what they've done.
Yeah, it's incredible. Brian, we're going to move on to a couple of all-star pictures. You've been to many all-stars, and while everybody is enjoying the glitz and the glamour, we're working away behind the scenes, doing our bits and bobs. It's not exactly a holiday night for some of us, but I love this one. This is Sinead Goldrick and Breach Corkery, and we're looking at a time when Breach had won her. I think it was Breach's seventh at the time, and Sinead's second award at the time, and there they are again, just sharing the moment. Lovely, lovely picture.
Yeah, again, just going back to the respect element, like, be rivals on the field. They've certainly no qualms about being friendly off the pitch, and obviously the night in question is their big night of the year, and you see some wonderfully talented players being recognised. But I am like, while I do take the formal presentations and everything, I do like looking out for little moments like this, just to show that it's, while they might appear to be friendly, it's not fake. You know what I mean? They
Mm.
actually have a genuine laugh. There's great crack. There's great camaraderie, and it's just a nice thing to see between rival players. And again, Cork and Dublin would be huge rivals over the last few years. And certainly like a player of Breach's stature, still able to kind of have the crack with. I think at the time, Sinead might have been an up and coming player compared to the player she is now. Do you know what I mean? And I love those little cameo pictures that just, I suppose, let people see that they're real people as well, and that they're just normal human beings, and they love a bit of crack and they do well. But look, sure, it's not all about necessarily winning awards and all that. It's as much about the experiences they have and the people they meet and the friends they make.
Yeah, 10 All Stars for Breach that she finished up with, and Goldie is on seven at the moment and counting. So you never know, she
Incredible.
might get her hands on one or two more All Stars before the end of her career. And this one I love as well. I really like, Brent, when you take an image and stick it into black and white format. There was one excellent one of Noelle Healy I saw, I think it was last year or the year before as well. But this one of Orla Finn collecting her All Star award as well. Just an absolutely stunning shot.
Yeah, I just like while we didn't necessarily go out and do it on purpose, like the hall is well decorated, and you've got the spotlight scenario going when they're walking up, through the crowd. So it's not necessarily they're all just walking up from a pre-arranged seat. They're all still with their families and friends, sitting at their table. So there's a bit of, like, they get a bit of applause, they get a bit of recognition even when they're walking up, because they have to
Mm.
walk past a lot of people. And I just like, we did a couple of them in black and white last year, and I just like there's the expression on her face, there's the glitz of the tables, and it's just, it is a special night for the players. And I suppose we did a few of these in black and white just to, I suppose, glam it up a little bit, even more so than it actually is. And to an extent, sometimes you see, big award shows now, a lot of the photography looks the same. And I suppose we're just trying to take it to a slightly different level, and, just make it something that's a bit more eye catching and a bit more glamorous, and just show it in a slightly different light, I suppose.
Lovely shot. There's one we also want to finish the selection on. Um, a colleague of ours at ladies football, sadly no longer with us, Brendan Clare Clarke, and this is just a gorgeous picture as well. Claire sadly passed away after a battle with cancer. She was only 35 years old, and unfortunately, from my own personal point of view, I didn't get to know Claire particularly well, or as well as I would have liked, because I would have joined the association a couple of years later. But I did know Claire, and she was a vivacious character and much loved as well, Brendan. And you would have met Claire also.
Yeah, I would have known Claire over the years. Like, she worked for ladies football for about 12 years. So I would have known her at various functions and various events over that time. And, like, to me, she was always just such a positive, outgoing, chatty person. And that's why I wanted to include this picture, because it just shows her in such a good light. And it just sums up to me what she was like. Like, she fought to the end, and she set up the Climb for Clare project, which helps children whose close family relatives have been diagnosed with cancer. So she had gone through it, and, like, for her own husband and her daughters Katie and Ava, it's important that they recognise their mum. that she was more than, well, she was a mother and a wife to her family, but she was more than that, and she has left a lasting legacy. And it it's still sad, even though it's been a few years now, it's still sad. And like, I just think this picture is just, there's just a light out of it, and there's
It's
a
beautiful.
delightfulness and just, it's the way we all want to remember Claire.
Absolutely. That was November 2014. Brendan, sadly, not too long before Clare left us, and left a huge void in so many people's lives. As you say, yes, the Climb for Clare initiative keeps her spirit alive, and Clare will never be forgotten. So thank you for picking that one out, Brendan. It's obviously of huge value to ourselves in the association, obviously to your good self as well, who knew Clare for many years. Brendan, an absolutely wonderful selection of photographs. Can I just ask you as an aside, we'd be regularly tic-tacking and looking ahead to various events, and you'll get your brief before the All-Ireland Finals, which is a rather detailed document. Can you talk me through, just, off the cuff, what a TG4 All-Ireland Final day looks like for the Sportsfile team, Brendan, and how much prep goes into it, how many photographers you'll send, and what's your daily itinerary?
Generally, All Ireland Finals days, whether in any shape or form now, take on a bit of a life of their own. We'd be as meticulous as any other team in that, like, when we have the three finals in, well, they're usually in September now, but we don't know when they'll be this year. But we would have 3-4 photographers generally at these games, depending on when we see the brief from you earlier in the week, and depending on how much crossover there is and things like that. But like, we'd have everything, like, we'd have radio set up, and we'd have, detailed itinerary. Like, we would divide up essentially the day minute by minute, so that everybody knows where to be, because you do have, because there's a triple header, there's not a minute to spare really throughout the day, because there'll be Jubilee teams, there'll be
Correct.
luncheons upstairs, there'll be sponsor work, there'll be the teams running out for the next game, there'll be the game, the previous game, so we try and give each game as much attention as we can, but we obviously have to be looking after the peripheral stuff for the LGFA and all the commercial partners, because that's their big day out as well. So they're busy enough days. Like, you're talking like 10 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, So while the matches are only on between 12 and 4 or 12 and 5, there's still a bit of time either side of that you have to take the pictures, edit the pictures, make sure all the pictures get taken, and sometimes even during the senior final, the crowd's going to be announced for the day. You have to be aware that, yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the middle of the game, but you have to be still able to react pretty quick to record it on the big screen, because that's as important as anything. Action comes and goes. If you miss an action picture, it's probably not the biggest deal in the world, but again, we just want to try and get the best that we can. But we would invest like significant resources into it, because we just think it deserves it. Do you know what I mean? And we want to get the best for both for ladies football and for the publicity and for the newspapers and everybody that uses pictures from it. So we do try and go all out and do the best job.
Absolutely, you do. Brendan, where did your love of photography stem from, and how did you get into this game?
We're going back, going back a bit now. I suppose. Look, I would have been. My dad is huge into sport, and as a result, I've been hugely into sport. So I suppose going out with him every Sunday to the local pitches, I would have got a huge interest in sport from that. And then, there was another photographer in Kerry, slightly older than me, that I would have got friendly with, and I suppose it looked like a cool job, to a 13 or 14-year-old. And it kind of started from there. Started working for the local newspapers while I was in school, and went to college and joined Sportsfile. I'm in the Sportsfile now longer than I care to remember.
When did you start there, Brendan?
1994.
Wow.
I think
Wow.
I'm there longer than some of the age of some of my colleagues.
Well, I was in DCU from 95 to 1999, so that'll give you some indication of how quickly the years go by,
They fly
Brendan.
by.
It's a vocation for you in many ways. Then it's obviously your profession, but it was a calling then in many senses.
There is something about it. Like, there's a
Well,
great thrill.
you're obviously very good at it. So I mean, Was it a
Well,
natural eye
somebody's
that
been
you
paying
had?
me. A fella like Ray McMahon has been paying me for 35 years now to do this, right?
But was it a natural eye that you have for photography, Brendan, or is there an element of training that eye as well?
Well, like there wouldn't be any history of photography in my family or anything. So it was just I suppose, a gradual interest, and trying to go, well, okay, I mightn't be very good at sport, but how can I get as close to the pitch as possible? And this was the next big thing. And like, unlike yourself or a journalist, we have to be right in front of what happens to record it. We can't kind of rely on secondhand information or look at a replay or anything like that. Like photography, you can't afford to miss it. And it's that thrill of the chase of getting the picture, that
Mm,
matters, or getting the moment that matters. And like even, a lot of times, when you meet people from the past and you remember things, people always go, "Oh, do you remember this or do you remember that?" And invariably, you're picturing in your head of what happened that day out or that night out or that occasion. And a lot of that stems from photography. It's kind of like an element of triggering people's memories. And so I think it's hugely important, while people go on about social media and video and television and all this sort of stuff. I don't know how many DVDs are hanging on people's walls. It's a
mm.
photograph.
Yeah,
And
I love it. Yeah.
when it's just photographs make people remember, it triggers a memory in them. And usually in sport, particularly, it's quite a positive memory. When they won and then they remember the people they were with and the crack they had and it just brings back loads of positive memories. And that's what I love about photography. And it's it mightn't be obvious and people might forget about it for a long time. But like if you look at a picture of your family or the event you were at or when you won a medal or, when you kicked the winning score or whatever, it does bring back, oh yeah, I remember that day and the people I was with at the occasion. And I suppose that for me, at the end of the day, has proved most pleasing about the whole aspect. I wouldn't have known that all the way up through my career. It comes with experience. But like, still being in the front row of hugely important sporting events is like you can't buy that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
And to be trusted by governing bodies and by media and whatever to represent the people in some shape or form and show them what goes on is like I don't take it lightly. Do you know what I mean? It's there's a personal cost to an extent, but the good outweighs the bad. It's like
Well, you're a,
anything in
you're a
business.
huge element of what we do anyway, Brendan. And I mean, it's always a comfort to know that we can just send you the brief, and I can just park that and put it to one side, and I know that the snaps are going to land, and
We
that's
know what we know what
you'd.
we're doing.
Yeah, that's where the trust factor comes into play.
We hope.
Brendan, how do you know when you've got a good shot? Is it when you're looking back through your
No,
snaps there, or do you just know?
well, it's instinct. Like again, look, I'm around the block now quite a while, so a lot of it's instinct. A lot of it's instinct and knowledge of what's going on the day.
Can you
Like
almost predict a shot?
to an extent, you have to try. Yeah, there would be pictures we would have, um, uh, there's likes of days like when in certain, like the likes of an All-Ireland men's final, we've put cameras on the roof and stuff, and
I love those ones. Yeah.
we're speculating and things like that. So you do kind of speculate, but an educated speculation. We're not just like doing an old Hail Mary and look, see if something comes off. A lot of it. There's a lot of planning goes into it, and sometimes it comes off and sometimes it doesn't. But if you don't, like as I said, most often on a given day, it's down to knowledge. To get the right players, to get the right incidents, to get the right people, the right moments. Certain players are right-footed, certain players are left-footed.
Mm.
You just get to know. The more knowledge you gain on something, the easier it is to predict what. And it's just been then using your knowledge and your experience in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, because we might, for example, flag you that there's a pair of sisters playing against each other on the same team and look for their reaction at full time and various little things like that. So the more knowledge you have from the
Yeah,
governing body or yourself in your pre-match preparation about what's coming, obviously the better for you.
yeah. You kind of take the element of chance out of it, and the more preparation you do, you're just stacking the odds in your favor of if something comes together, you're going to get it. Like it's a bit, Roy Keane had a famous phrase like "fail to prepare, prepare to fail,"
Mm.
and that does ring true in a lot of walks of life, but it certainly does. Like we don't just rock up at 5-3, and the match is kicking off, and go, what's going on here? Everybody
In
gets
for the national anthem, yeah.
Like that. That day is gone. That day might have prevailed in the past, but now, because of social media and everybody wants stuff in a hurry, and you just don't really have time to. When you're on a match day, you just don't really have time to take your eye off the ball, because if you do, you'll miss something. And I said, like, we can't rely on replays, or we can't rely on, oh, hang on, can I get that off somebody else? No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't afford to miss.
Bren, you've obviously, as you say, covered ladies football for a long, long time, and you've touched on it earlier on in the conversation. But from where you picked it up to where it is now, can you quantify it or describe what it's like now? I think we've made some progress, all right, through the years.
Yeah, like there's been huge progress on all women's sport over the years. Like, as I said, while to an extent the last few years it might be cool to be seen to be involved with women's sport. Like, in my career, like, I photographed everything from women's hockey to basketball to ladies football to rugby, going back 20, 25 years. So, it's always been there. It certainly has come on in leaps and bounds, like men's sport has, in terms of fitness and skill and all that sort of stuff over time, because that just develops over time. You can't fast track it. People can't get fit in a hurry. It has to take time, and the game develops, the skills develop, the rules develop. There is a lot of change over time, but it is like the one thing you do notice in certain sports is the lack of cynicism. Like, you don't really see it in ladies football. You don't see it in camogie. You don't see it in, like, basketball itself would be quite self-disciplined. Do you know what I mean? And when you look at the likes of leagues abroad or higher profile leagues, certain players, there's an element of, well, bending the rules a little bit. No, I don't want to say too much, but you know what I'm getting at. You'd never see that in ladies football, ever. I've yet to see it. And while the rules might change and the games develop and to win it all, they do still want to win. Their appetite for winning hasn't diminished. But there's certainly an element of respect between the players and the teams, that, yes, you want to win at all costs, but it doesn't involve cheating. Do you know what I mean? Like, you look at some of the more international sports with doping, and like, they just get into all sorts of stuff, whereas winning is the only thing. Whereas I suppose in Ireland, it's not the only thing. It's one of the important things, but you still have to live among your community, and you still, we're all people at the end of the day that are just trying to enjoy life.
Brendan, how much are you looking forward to getting those briefs back in again and back on the LGFA touchlines?
I'm looking forward to getting back to the pitches. The briefs now is a different matter. But yeah, hopefully now, like in the next couple of months, we'll see something come back. Like, I can imagine now, between possibly August, September on till Christmas, it's just going to get really busy because every sport is going to try and fit in what they've lost over the summertime. So there'll be plenty of days that we won't be going around wearing shorts and t-shirts. It'll be heavy rain gear and whatnot, and look, that's part of the territory. Like, having the likes of a ladies All-Ireland final or a men's All-Ireland final under lights in Croke Park is actually hugely exciting for a photographer. Even if the game is on at 2 o'clock in the day, they're going to have the lights on, and that's actually quite a tantalizing prospect, because there's something.
There's a magic about the lights, isn't there?
Yeah, it's nearly like it's taken in a studio, and obviously we don't work with studio lights necessarily taking action photography, but there's a glint and there's a bit of a glamour to a match under lights in Croke Park, and I, for one, am certainly looking forward to seeing a couple of All-Ireland finals, hopefully there this year.
Good stuff, Brendan. We look forward to working with you for some time to come as well. Brendan, great talking to you today. Where are you holed up at the moment, and are you back?
I'm still in Dublin at the minute, but I'm hoping to get home now in a week or two, just to get a bit of fresh air and see the folks and all the family down there. But no, at the moment we're still tipping away in Dublin. Sure, somebody has to keep the show on the road.
Good. No, you're running an absolutely brilliant ship there. Regards to all the team as well, and the crew and Sportsfile. Brendan Moran, thanks for talking to us today and bringing us some memorable images from down through the years, and we look forward to seeing many, many more in the years to come.
Thanks very much, Jack.